Hi, I'm Chad. Welcome to Product Mastery Now. Today is one of those discussions. I've done one of these so far and I enjoyed it so much. I'm doing another one. I'm reaching out to past colleagues and some experts in the field that I've talked with before, just really to kind of catch up. And I regard these as the state of innovation or the state of product management discussions because I don't know what I'm going to ask the guest really yet. I thought about it a little bit. We're going to see what comes up in the discussion, but he certainly doesn't know what I'm asking. And likewise, I don't know what he's going to be asking me. But it's nice to get together with people that have deep experience and knowledge and just have a good discussion, because I do these catch-up calls with people at times, and afterwards we often go, man, why didn't we record that? There was actually some really good things in that discussion. So with me is Steve Johnson. I have known Steve Johnson for a few years. I knew him by reputation because he was the lead instructor at Pragmatic Marketing, which I now think, Steve, is what, Pragmatic Institute? All right. Steve hasn't been there for a bit of time, but I think for 15 years you led the instructional efforts there and created the training and all kinds of great things. And we met at a conference a few years ago and have kept up since then. Steve, give a little bit more background for everyone on who you are and what you're up to.
Okay, great. Well, I've been coaching product management teams for 30 years, I think. I was the first instructor hired at Pragmatic, and I did that, as you said, for 15 years, and then found that I wanted to go beyond training into really more coaching, staying with the team long enough to see the results. And I've been working with a number of teams over the last decade or so, really focusing on the strategic role of product management. Right now, I'm terribly concerned about the impact of AI on product management, and I'll speak about that a little bit. But I think that actually AI is an exciting thing for product management in that I think we're going to have the ability to build more products, which means it's ever more critical to make sure we're building the right products.
Excellent. Yeah. So good intro. And with that, we'll jump in and see where this discussion goes right after this.
How can you unlock your full potential as a product manager? We're sharing the product management insights you need. They are based on the 7 research-backed knowledge areas for product mastery. You'll learn to create products customers love, enhance your influence, and elevate your career. Welcome to Product Mastery Now, hosted by Dr. Chad McAllister, product management professor, practitioner, and your guide.
Steve, thanks so much for being here and talking about whatever comes up today. You did tee up a topic which is somewhat related to what I want to talk about as well, but why don't you lead the way on your thoughts about AI impacts, disruptions in the product management space? I think those impacts are being felt by many people, regardless of their job role, except maybe trades. I just had a boiler replaced, and I don't think he's too concerned at his job being impacted or replaced anytime soon by AI until we get really good robots. But
Very true.
nonetheless, how are you seeing this with the people you work with?
Well, let me start off with a little story. A few months ago, I had a heart scare, and I'm fine.
Very good.
And I went to urgent care, and they said, okay, you're not having a heart attack. Maybe you're having an anxiety attack. You don't have COVID. And they just kind of knocked off some stuff. And then my doctor did a follow-up and called me and said, would you like to come in and have us check out what's going on with you? And I went, cool. But in the meantime, I thought, well, I wonder if my blood pressure was out of sorts or out of sync. And so I went into the doctor's portal and wanted to see, is there a graph or a trend of some kind of my blood pressure over time? As I told you, I've been dieting more and exercising more, and hopefully those are all good things. Anyway, I'm looking at 10 years worth of text, which says Steve came in and we did these things and we had these pills and we took these measurements, whatever. And I'm like, well, I can't parse all of this noise. So, being me, I uploaded those PDFs to ChatGPT and said, please build me a chart of my blood pressure, pulse, and weight over time. And it went 3, 2, 1, bang, here's your chart. And the good news in looking at that I did not have an anomaly on the day that I was having whatever that problem was. Since then, I've gone to see a cardiac doctor and who says my heart is beautiful, which
Isn't
I
that
thought
great?
was kind of a lovely way of putting it. But
I have one better for you, Steve. When I got my colonoscopy, I got an A plus. That's for whatever that is worth.
well, that is exciting. And so I told this story to somebody else, and they said, "Aren't you worried about training the model?" And I'm like, I have no idea what that means. And now I do. But it occurs to me, how many salespeople have uploaded their call
Right.
sheets?
Right.
How many of us have posed a product idea and not really understood what is safe and what is not safe?
Yeah, the information that could be retrieved from ChatGPT. Yes.
Indeed. And so there are settings, and I think we're all learning more about what is safe and what is not, and there are models you can install locally, but I think AI is a similar watershed to the internet. I mean, not just the internet, but the World Wide Web. I mean, it was like business changing, life changing technology. And I think we're there as well. And I think there's some good and some bad to that. The really frightening part that I do think about often is when AI has replaced all of us, what are we going to do for a living? How are we going to buy the products and services that everybody wants us to buy when we have no income? So I think about that a lot. But as I said, I really think that a lot of the tedium of product management and development is going to be replaced by AI in the short term if it hasn't already been.
Yeah, absolutely. I attended a webinar. I think I actually talked about this in a previous episode briefly. Not a sponsor, not an ad for it at all, but I attended a webinar from ProdPad a little while ago. And were you on that webinar too? Because I know I run into you on webinars at times. I don't remember if you were on that webinar as
I
well.
can't remember,
Yeah, I
but
know.
I do love those guys at Pat. I think
Yeah,
they're
so Janet Brestow, the CEO there, was talking with someone else, but they were presenting how they've added AI into their platform, which I think is the right approach, right? I think what we'll see is ChatGPT-like tools customized, hopefully based on models that are tailored for the situation, into tools that are just make the workflow a no-brainer, right?
yeah,
We don't have to go anywhere else to get things done. And so if you're
right.
using ProdPad to manage your product management efforts and to keep track of your requirements or user stories and to keep track of strategy and what you're trying to accomplish and everyone on the same page, it makes sense to have that button right there that you can click on that simply says, here's our understanding of this customer now. This is what we found from our customer research. Did we miss anything, right? And not that it's going to be perfect, but can give you an idea of like, oh, based on what I know about customers like that, here are some other things that maybe you should look into, right? And that sort of thing just throughout using the tool. And I think that's a pretty powerful. I think of this as an AI companion, not in the weird sex way, right, that sometimes comes up in that language. But this got introduced to me through another interview last year, a person working on culture. She said starting at the beginning of the year, so this was beginning of 2024, the number one question I get asked by CEOs is, how do we prepare our workforce for AI companions, for an AI on the team? And I've had some of those experiences now thinking about that. Like I reach out, I've talked about this before too, reach out to Claude.ai. Claude is my brainstorming partner. I just like the way Claude interacts more than I like ChatGPT. And so I think like I have this AI companion on my team to help me with stuff.
But I think that at least right now, you and I are doing that on our own.
Right.
It's like I'm curious, I'm interested, and I find it as well a delightful companion. I had a blog post I wanted to write the other day. I wasn't really in writing mode yet. It was just like, I've got this story, I have these 3 points I want to make, blah, blah. And I had, like, if you will, the requirements, but not the solution, not the spec. And so I just uploaded a bunch of bullets, and boom, it's like, okay, how do you like this? And I said, could you make it a little snarkier? Because I'm kind of known for that. And it's like, cool, be glad to. Snarky on, whatever. And I ended up spending another hour working with it, but it was so much easier to work with when it had been roughed out from my outline to a bigger thing.
Right. Yeah,
And
it's easier and frankly more fun.
yeah,
Because I have the blank page problem at times, and I'm getting better at recognizing this because sometimes I think I'm just stubborn. Right? It's like, okay, I need to start writing, and after an hour, I still don't have anything that is in any way worthwhile. Right? Like, why did I just do this sooner? Let's go to my AI friend and say, this is the
right.
topic. Help me get started on this. Like, boom, like, and it triggers neurons that weren't responsive before to just my input, right? And helps me get started.
Well, a lot of times it's easier to edit than create, and ultimately, though, you are the human component of it. I think that I am worried about the amount of AI written stuff that is all just pablum, it's
Yeah.
generic with no real point of view, and it depends on how well you can construct a prompt, I suppose. But if AI can take your job, AI will take your job. And I think that's terrifying. But also, it emphasizes how important it is for us to be engaged as humans with one another. I had a thought and then I lost it. Oh, here it is. Okay. It's like an intern. You always have to check an intern's work. Maybe they're really good researchers, or maybe they're just good people, whatever. But still, you look at it and you go, that's not really right. And AI, at least for now, still has a problem of hallucination in that if it doesn't have an answer, it'll just make one up. And if you're a product manager who doesn't know customers, you can't really look at the output and say, oh, this is incorrect. So I've heard of people creating entire business cases or PRDs, and they go, well, it looks really good. Yeah, but if you don't have an understanding of technology and an understanding of the product and an understanding of the company's capabilities and the understanding of the markets and their problems, then it's just words. And you don't know how to say, oh, well, gee, that's not the right persona, or that's not like anyone I've ever met. If you've never met a CPO and you're selling to a CPO, then you don't know what they look like, and you can't tell that the persona document is inaccurate.
Right, right. So let's run with that thought a little bit. So maybe a slight tangent, but I want to pick up on it. So you've seen organizations go through the adoption of Agile, and when we say Agile or Agile, we typically mean Scrum, right? So both of you and I have enough experience that we've been around extreme programming and Crystal and other Agile type things, but Scrum is what we mean today. That's what organizations are using. And Scrum introduced this thing called the product owner role, which didn't exist before. And it kind of confused companies. And companies that had product managers seem to really be kind of confused about this. And we can talk about where we both think we maybe ended up now. But there was a period of time during this, I saw one organization that I had used, I won't say more, one organization that I was aware of. And we had a lot of product managers, right, in the company. And when they did their Agile transformation, all the product managers became product owners, and they were told, do not talk to customers. Your job is to support the development team and not talk to customers. Sales, you're going to love this because I know you were a sales engineer and have some definitive thoughts on this. Sales will be the one that will represent the customer perspective, and your job is to make sure the development teams build the things that are needed, right? I heard this at the time, having a product management perspective and going, oh, help them. This is not a good place to be if we're taking someone out of the loop that should be talking to customers and not doing that anymore. And it's tangential to me because I don't want to go down the AI stream too far on this because it changes so quickly, but I am a little bit concerned with the tools that are coming up. Like just this week I came across a customer research capability, a new company that has formed that gives you AI agents to represent your customers. And in their research, they're saying, hey, talk to a real customer, and if you expect 95% of an understanding of their unmet needs, we're going to give you 86% based on our AI agents. And I'm like, okay, that sounds pretty good, but that little difference is can be a competitive miss, right? So my point is I'm a little curious about where this might end up going with people not paying attention to who the customer actually is, right? Taking the shortcuts.
Yeah, there are so many parts of that I want to speak to if I can remember them all.
Yeah, starting with
It
the product
does,
owner thing. I think that was,
yeah, it does seem that a lot of marketing people and a lot of development people hate talking to customers. They like outsourcing it. It's like, could we hire a research firm for it? Could
right.
we get an agency to do it for us? And frequently, I've worked with teams on like positioning or defining new products, and half the time I look around the room and no one there has talked to a customer. And so we do go out and fetch a salesperson. Except salespeople don't really talk to customers, they talk to prospects. And not only that, and I love salespeople, but
Like,
researching the market is not their job.
and that's
Their
the thing.
job
They have
is,
a different objective.
yeah, their job is to sell what we've already built to people who want to buy it. And when I was in sales, I certainly was not listening for, are there some unsolved issues that we should delay my sale so that we can build this special thing for you,
Right.
right? I would definitely sell what I had, right? And not every salesperson does, but I think that salespeople listen differently. They listen for, how do I close this? How do I deal with these inquiries and overcome them, if you will? And likewise, support people. I love support people, but their objective is to get off the phone. I want to resolve your problem and move on to the next ticket.
Yep.
Marketing, it seems, wants to just buy research reports, which I don't mind having analyst research or industry research, but it doesn't uncover the unsolved problem. I was working with a team a while back, and it was, let's see, a friend of mine was a volunteer at this organization, and I was in town. He said, hey, why don't you come with me to my volunteer gig, and then we'll go to dinner after. So I'm there, and he introduces me to the office manager, and he says, Steve's an absolute computer nerd. If you need any computer stuff, just ask him. And so the office manager said, hey, yeah, we got a couple of new Windows computers. Could you set them up for us? And I'm like, sure,
I'm
okay.
here. Why not?
So I'm sitting here hitting click a lot. You don't have to pay attention. You just have to say okay every once in a while. And I'm listening to the volunteers, the other volunteers who are like doing outbound calling and such. And they were yelling at their computers. And I was like, this is odd. So finally, I did a click that was going to take a while. So I went over and just kind of hung out. And finally said, what is going on here? Why are you so hateful to your computers? And it turns out that someone had corrupted about 20% of the database that they were using. And if there was an ampersand in the title field, all of the records were off by a row, if you will. So it was like Mr., and then first name was and Mrs., and last name was the first name and all that stuff. And I went, is it consistent? And they're like, yeah, whatever. So I spent, 10 minutes writing a macro to move everything into the correct positions. And they went crazy. They're jumping up and down, yay for Steve. And they were like, let me find another one. And I went over to the office manager and I said, why didn't you tell me about that thing? And she said, oh, well, because computers suck. I mean, that's just the way it is. You suffer it. It never occurred to her that it could be programmatically fixed. And one of my favorite statements, I guess, is when customers tell you what they want, they're almost always wrong. When they tell you what problem they have, they're almost always right.
Right. And it's a very big distinction, right?
Yeah.
When I only went back to graduate school because I got fascinated with a problem, right? Which is, how can we reliably understand what customers want and deliver that to them? And that led to my dissertation work. And that was a key aspect, right? Is when customers tell you what they want, all of us talk about our frame of reference, which is our experience with that thing. And we tend to talk in terms of, well, if it's faster, if it's easier to use, if it was cheaper, cost me less money, those would be better things. But it's hard to get outside of our knowledge and our frame experience about that
Right.
thing.
Right.
We need
think of
someone that will understand the problem and then maybe think about it differently. How can we actually add new value there?
True. Think of the number of times you've heard people say, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions.
Right.
And that's exactly wrong for product managers.
It is.
Don't bring me solutions, bring me problems.
Yeah.
And I'll work with a technical team to figure out the best way to solve that problem. But if you bring me a feature, I'll build you a feature, and half the time it's not what you really need.
Right. Yeah. So to that point, one of my main hats is university professor, and I helped recreate this program at the University of Fredericton. We call them UFred. They're a Canadian university, and just love what we're doing up there. And so we have now an MBA and innovation program that I get to lead and help with. And one thing that comes up in that is the first course is in innovation is to teach students how to innovate. And we use a process, super well researched. It's in a book called The Innovator's Method by Jeff Dreyer and Nathan Furr. And simple process, and we see this process through 50 years of innovation research. The process hasn't really changed, right, how companies do these sort of things. But it starts with an insight. We have that observation, right? We run into something maybe ourselves, or we see our friends running into or read about it in the news. It's like, why isn't this simpler, right? That's the spark of an insight, right, to maybe pursue. And then a deep understanding of the problem, and maybe we use Jobs to be done or some other tools to understand what that problem is and who is having that problem, who the customer is. And then we move on to the solution, and we think about possible solutions and work through a funnel to get to what really is going to satisfy the customer and delight them. And then there's one other phase at the end to kind of test things. But so half that model, there's 4 phases I described. There's half of it has all to do with the problem aspect. And it's really, I think this is just human nature, that when we talk about our problems that customers have, we automatically move into solution language. And I see students doing it all the time, and I think people in organizations still do it too, right? Like you said, we've kind of been instructed, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And that we don't even notice we're doing it at all, right? Because someone will show up and say, well, we just need an app that does X, Y, Z. Right? And the app, so if it's a student project, maybe they're thinking about weight loss, right? Before we started recording, as you mentioned, we were both talking about losing some weight, which is a good thing, trying to be healthier, keep our blood work in the right area. And so, but instead of telling me about their project, about the insight and problem they've come across, like we recognize some people really struggle losing weight, and we want to make that easier for people. And here's a specific group of people that have been trying the keto diet, and they're really struggling with that. And we think we could help that, right? And so drilling into specifics here, they'll show up instead and say, hey, we got this idea for an app that could help you. We could use AI, and we could help coach people through things they should be doing to lose weight that are on the keto diet. Like, why are you talking to me about a solution when we haven't even discussed how we do solutions yet? And I think that's just an automatic part of human nature that we dive into that without even recognizing it per se.
Yeah, and I think we also have the curse of knowledge. On the tech side, it's like, oh, I already know what you're talking about. I absolutely can fix that. What it'll require is a little bit of JavaScript and blah, blah, blah. It'll put it in a database. I mean, we're knowledgeable about solutions, but maybe not expert. And I have a simple version of that. I was doing win-loss analysis for a company and found that the sales team was actually losing deals on a technical capability that the product actually had, but the salespeople weren't aware of.
Right.
And, or worse, the salespeople weren't able to speak to, I think, is the issue. So I'm sitting here thinking, well, I think what we need to do is bring all the sales team together and explain database methodology, whatever. And I was talking to my marketing person, and she said, well, hang on. Instead of educating them, why don't we just kind of empower them? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, why don't we take the CTO and put him in front of a camera and record him saying things? This is why we did this thing, and this is how we did that thing. And then when the sales team runs into that situation, they can just play the video, and here's the CTO answering the question. I would never have thought of that. Now that I have encountered it, I think of it all the time. But at the time, I was like, I need to write something to train them. I need to present something to train them. I was into it. All we have to do is increase the training for the sales teams, and she understood some of the different choices that were available and proposed video as a way of getting there. And it was hugely successful.
Yeah.
And it was something I would not have thought of in my own solutioning. So
Right.
it was a real lesson to me to not, and a lot of people disagree with what I'm going to say. I don't like to even suggest a solution, at least initially. I've gotten to this place where I've had so many times I've said, hey, what I need is something with like 3 tables and then reference fields between the tables so that we can do this other thing. And now I'm just like, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. What do you think I should do? And guess what? I'm having the same experience with AI. Instead of saying, hey, could you write me some code that does this thing? I'm like, here's what I'm trying to do. How do you propose I do it?
And it is helpful. Yeah.
And a real quick one. Like, it used to be, there were so many times that I've got a spreadsheet where I've got first name. And I've got like a first name column. No, yeah, it's the other one. I've got a full name column. And I want to extract the first name from it. So I go searching out in the world and find somebody
What's the right formula to do that?
about using left to get a subscript. And now I just ask an AI, how do I get the first name out of I'm sorry. And what I would usually do, even with AI, is say, tell me again how to use the left function. And now I'm saying, hey, I've got a full name field I want to extract the name from. How do I do that in application X? And it's changed my relationship. And the moral of this whole thing is we're going to have to get good at talking about, frankly, requirements. Instead of saying, as our customers do, how do I build this feature? Or how do I build this feature? Instead saying, here's the problem I'm trying to solve. What
Right.
do you recommend?
Right. Yeah.
Which is what we were supposed to be doing 35 years ago when we were writing the product shall requirements, and 10 years ago when we started writing, as a user, I want this feature so I can have this feature I want. We really have to, as humans, get better at understanding what we're trying to accomplish, but not how to.
Right.
So we're still responsible for the what, the who, and the why, not the how.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be I think we're going to realize how important that is for a product manager going forward. And it's not so simple as I read a statement the other day from someone who said, in no time at all we'll be able to say, please build me an accounting product. There's not enough parameters there. For whom? Why? What should it do? What should it not do? How is it going to be competitively better than something else?
Right. Right. Absolutely. I've been more curious. I don't have any well-formulated thoughts about this, but I've been thinking about the organizational constructs and organizational structure elements that help or hinder product innovation and how we create new products. And to this point about maybe we're not in the right situation, right place to be thinking about the solution. We should be asking the questions more about what we need to come up with. Organizations are structured as silos too often and by function. So you have marketing, you have development or engineering, you have sales and the like. And when we have to reach out to help with a problem that involves another silo, another function, a lot of the time we kind of think of like it's us versus them in some way. And we don't even, because I've experienced this myself and I've seen it done too many times, we don't even reach across the aisle, so to speak, in the organization about what they actually need, right? We just start coming up with the solution to the situation. And I think that's an area where we would do ourselves a world of good and just say, oh, well, let's go talk to sales, like your example before, about how can our product actually has this feature. how can we help you be equipped in front of customers, and maybe have that brainstorming discussion together, right? I
And yet,
think,
you know what?
yeah,
Even there, I think they would say, I need you to go on sales calls with me. Right? Not
we've both done that, right?
right.
And
Oh, sure.
which is in part why we like salespeople, right? Because they can give us access. But a sales call is not a problem discovery sort of call.
Correct. Correct. And imagine if you tried it. It's like, well, I've got the answer to your question, but before we do, we're thinking about embedding something in our product because right now our reporting and our visualization are just terrible. And we really want to improve that in our next release. And the sales guy's going, wait, what is terrible? You're telling my client that there's a part of our product that's terrible? I mean, we've lost whatever credibility we had with the salespeople.
Right. There is one question that came to my mind that I wanted to get your insights on, because you have talked about product management, governance, and
Product ops.
I'm sorry, what?
Product ops.
Yes, product ops. That was
I thought
exactly
that
the
was the
phrase
word you were looking
I
for.
was trying to find there. And organizationally, we put some barriers in place that make things not work right. I had these great interviews with Doug Hall. It was episode 518 and 522. And so Doug was at P&G for 8 years, created tons of products, ran a big group, and then went and started Eureka Ranch, which for 30 years, companies come to Eureka Ranch and discover insights, ideate on things they could do for their customers, and have products actually designed, right? So the Eureka Ranch is really good at helping customers get a product from maybe nothing or a spark of an idea into something that could actually be made. And he shared, and this may not actually be in the recording, but I'm sure he would have made me share it, but it may have been in the recording, that Chad had been doing this for 30 years now, and you'll be shocked by this, only about 10% of the companies that spend a fair bit of money having a new product designed to respond to customers' problems, only about 10% of them actually move forward and build that product. And it was really through his frustrations with that a little bit. And then he went and started a bourbon company, so a distillery for bourbon, through other interesting things, because one of the tools they use at Eureka Ranch is patent mining. And this came up, how the bourbon process looks like some other chemical process that he knows well. And they brought some real innovation to aging bourbon rapidly. So that was all fascinating. But in the process, he's learned like organizations just do a lot of stupid things. In creating our distillery company, we've done some stupid things. And we don't know until employees tell us that those are stupid things in the place. And we need ways of dealing with some of those stupid things. And organizationally, it seems like sometimes the bigger challenges are, let me try to get to a concise question, which is, perhaps I should be asking you, what do you see as the purpose of product ops in relationship to the company's ability to innovate? And if that's confusing, it still is a little bit murky in the way I think about it. There was a time where I've asked product managers, do you think that you're a product innovator? And yeah, those are synonyms, same exact thing. And I think from a product manager's perspective, that's true, that we're creating something new, we're innovating. But from an organizational perspective, I don't see the organization saying, oh yeah, there's our innovation capability, it's in our product managers.
I that as well.
Yeah, and they don't really have an innovation capability. There's something's
Yeah.
lacking. And I don't think product ops gets us there
doesn't.
helping with that problem.
It doesn't, and I don't think it should. The language is so important to me, and I think for a starting place, if you put 5 executives in a room and asked what is innovation, you'd get at least 17 answers, right?
Yep. Or even worse, what is our strategy? But
Right, for sure.
yeah.
And I think a lot of people confuse innovation with invention.
Right.
We've built a thing, we've invented something,
Yeah.
but that's
We've
not
added features.
innovation, right? Innovation, in my definition, is solving a problem in a new way that matters to customers. Like when Microsoft 100 years ago switched from selling point products to selling Microsoft Office for one price. To me, that was an innovation. When Adobe went off.
And just on that point real quick, for people that might not be recognizing, I think, your thought path on that, right? It's like, well, they're still selling Office. What's the big deal? That was a huge business model change, moving to a software as a service model. And frankly, I expected it to cripple Microsoft. I did not think they would make it through the revenue hiccups that just that business model changed. And so,
And Adobe did the same thing
yeah,
and
yeah,
had
absolutely.
huge success with it,
Right.
apparently.
Yep.
And to me, packaging and the way we put things in suites or charge by the month instead of by the license, I mean, all of these are innovations. I read a survey last year that 87% of CEOs say that innovation is critical to their future, and less than 20% think they have the team to get them there.
Right.
And I think you've nailed it with product management should be that innovation arm. And yet, in many cases, in many cases, product managers are merely project managers or worse, secretaries to development.
Right.
And years ago, I attended a conference on Agile when it was still kind of new-ish, and somebody was describing the role of product owner. And I loved it almost. He said the product owner represents the customer and the business. And I'm like, yay! And then he finished his sentence, to the development team.
Oh, right.
And what's happened in those organizations that have adopted Agile and the product owner role, and as you said earlier, really what I mean is adopted Scrum and the product owner role, the product owners have become not product managers, they've become business analysts.
Right.
Their job is to take somebody else's idea and write the user stories.
Right.
And I'm telling you, that is gone as a career. If Jira's going to have that capability, ProdPat's going to have that capability. I've got an idea, click a button, here's all the user stories.
Yeah.
And so product ops enters the picture. And I've read some really good ideas around product ops and some really frightening and not good ideas. Some have said that product ops does the strategic role of product management, researching the market, that kind of stuff. And all the things that product managers in their secretarial role don't have time to do. So they're shifting the actual important part of product management from the product owners who are busy typing in Jira to product ops. And some other organizations create innovation teams which say, hey, let's build some cool stuff. But real product owners start with what problems exist in the market that we are qualified to solve in a way different than is currently out there.
Right. It's still a product management role.
Yeah.
So I have not talked with companies that have a product ops capability in any detail to really understand this. But in the example you just shared, it sounds like basically we don't have product management going on effectively because the product owners aren't doing it. And so we're going to create a new capability to try to patch that, which always rubs me the wrong way, right? We did this with project management offices, PMOs. We were supposed to standardize project management practices and help us be more effective. But it seemed like, and I may be offending someone, my apologies, that had more to do with, well, our project managers aren't competent enough with what we want them to be doing. We need to provide another level to help with this, which to me
really,
feels like
police
attacking a symptom and not the root cause.
And in many cases, they're the police.
Yeah.
They're like, you have not completed task number 72 on your Gantt chart or something.
Right.
So it's like oversight for project management. But
I'm a little concerned about product ops being similar. So
I agree. I agree.
I wasn't sure where you might be with that.
Yeah. I think that instead of the PMO, we ought to turn our eyes to DevOps. And DevOps says, here's how we work here. Welcome aboard. We know that you know how to be a programmer, but we use this code repository, and this is how you check things out so that you don't step on some other programmer. And we do our builds every afternoon at 5, so you need to check your code in by then. And it's like we have figured out what is a best practice for this organization, and they're basically onboarding people so that they fit onto the team and work in the rhythms of that development team. And that's what product ops should be. Yet, and it's even, I think, worse in the case of product management, since only 20% of product managers have ever actually been trained in product management. So we say, welcome aboard. We assume you know how to be a product manager, which instantly is not true. And you'll find a lot of interesting stuff on SharePoint. So what kind of onboarding is that, right? I mean, the only onboarding we get is here's a corporate laptop so that you don't have any stuff on your personal computer, I guess. But where's the how do we do this here? And I've spent a lot of energy on this over the last decade or so. Here's a playbook of templates so that they all look the same. And the reason I enjoy working with the people at ProdPad is they've kind of gone the same way. It's like, why is it that a roadmap looks different depending on what product manager did it?
Right.
You do yours in Excel, I do mine in PowerPoint. Somebody ought to be doing it in one of the good road mapping tools. But who selects that? Who standardizes that? And
that happens in organizations. I think the bigger the organization, the bigger the problem.
Agreed.
A past interview was with a product manager at Facebook, and him going from one project to the next project, the variety of tools in use. It's like, you got to be kidding. How inefficient is this to have to relearn tools every time you're on a new project with a new team?
Totally. And the opposite as well. If I'm presenting a business plan to leadership, and this one is a 95-page PRD, and yours is a one-page business model canvas, what is the executive going to think of that? It's like, don't you guys have any methods that you standardize on? And that's where product ops can bring real value. It's like, oh, and one more little rantette. I was doing a training for about 20 people, and a lot of my training is really not around doing product ops, but standardizing product management. As I said, there's astoundingly few people have been trained. So anyway, I was really making the point that one of the number one things that a product manager can do is have customer insights that are not from sales or from support or from professional services, but I was in a room with a real person watching them really do the work, and that's how I discovered this Mr. and Mrs. Record problem I was talking about. And one of the people in the room stopped me and said, well, Steve, but I do get a lot of good information out of Salesforce. And I was getting ready to agree when somebody said, wait a minute, how did you get access to Salesforce?
Right.
So I've got 20 product managers in the room. 19 want to know why they don't have access to Salesforce. The person who brought it up said, well, I used to be a sales engineer, and then I moved into product management, and I still have my login. And somebody else said, that's funny. I have that. I used to be in support, and I still have my login for support. I find so much good information of customer calls in there. 19 people go, how come I don't have access to that?
This goes back to the silo problem, right? It's
And yet, if we had someone saying, what are our best practices? And so this is something I feel strongly about, obviously. I don't believe in best practices. I believe every organization is unique. The customers, the products, the people are all different. We need to find what works for us. We can't just say, oh, Spotify does it this way, or 37 Signals does it that way, or what does Facebook do? And as you pointed out, Facebook does all of those things and 75 others. How does success happen at this company? So what data sets do I need access to? What research is available to me? How do I go about visiting a customer? I mean, it would make sense for me to clear it with a sales guy before I get in there, but I shouldn't be in the position of having to argue with a salesperson about my right to visit a customer, right? That should have been dealt with by management or product ops. How do we do win-loss here? I mean, it's just a whole bunch of how do we do this? And what do I need to be effective in my job?
Right.
And to imagine any other job where we say, welcome aboard, why don't you wander around the network and see if you can find any good stuff?
Right. Very good. Yeah. The best, we don't have time to dive in this because we have to land this here sometime soon. But the discussion around best practices, I'm with you to a point, right? And I suspect we both think the same thing, but I just want to clarify that, yeah, if
Certainly,
I'm asked,
visiting customers is a best practice. I think we can
yeah,
all
certainly, right?
Yeah.
I think there are frameworks that we say, like win-loss. Do we even do win-loss, right? There's things that we know we need to be doing. The specifics of how we do that and the data that we use and we have available, yeah, that needs to be relevant to our culture and our organization for
Yeah.
sure.
You and I are in
So
agreement.
when a customer comes, as has happened, and asks me, well, just teach us how Apple does it. Like, what are you even talking about, right? You're not Apple, and this isn't going to work. I can teach you the fundamentals that you need to know about product management, and then organically, you figure out how this is going to work in your organization, because you can't transplant how Apple does it somewhere
Right.
else. It's not going to work. So
It's kind of like the guy who says, I want to be Steve Jobs. And you're like, hey, I knew Steve Jobs and you're not Steve Jobs, right?
and wearing
And
the black
also,
turtlenecks is not going to cut it.
exactly.
So, very good. But speaking about fundamentals, you gave me a good intro because I do like to put a sponsor ad in here, which is for the training that I do provide. Because you talked about onboarding product managers. And this is a system that is based off of PDMA's, their framework of knowledge. So that's the Product Development Management Association. Nonprofit, most people don't know about this group, but incredible group that's been around for about 50 years now, researching how product management, how product innovation works, and contributing to the knowledge that is known in that area. And so there's these 7 buckets of knowledge. I've put them together in an easy-to-learn system and been providing them for years now to individuals and companies in a system I call the Rapid Product Mastery Experience, the RPM experience. And to John Spirrell's credit, he's going to be someone I interview here shortly. He hired me for 5 years. Every year he built an onboarding program for product managers at his organization. And every year he would run one, right? They would bring on new product managers. And so for 5 years, I got to participate in that exercise. And I did a part of that for him. And we used this RPM experience to make sure people are grounded in these 7 knowledge areas, these 7 knowledge buckets. What fascinates me is most people that get involved in this training, they've been doing product management work for 3, 5, 10 years. And they're finding blind spots like, oh, I didn't know I knew about that thing, but I didn't understand why we do that thing, or I didn't know how these things were connected. And so it is a really great way to make sure that you are ready for that next step of your career advancement, to not have blind spots and get grounded. If you want to look into how Rapid Product Master Experience could help you individually, or maybe your team, your group, it really works well for a group of product managers in your organization if you want to put a group together, or if you're a product VP and want to look into that. Just go to productmasterynow.com and you'll find information on it. The specific page is productmasterynow.com/RPM. It is a good tool for maturing product managers, helping them feel more confident in knowing what they need, and also onboarding. So thanks for the opportunity to segue into that, Steve. I do like innovation quotes, as does listeners as well. Wanted to ask you for one, and if you can kind of describe what that means to you in your own words.
Well, I actually have 2. I've already used one of them. Don't bring me solutions, bring me problems. I think the biggest as I said earlier, I think the biggest struggle we have in innovation is we're thinking, how do we build a cool thing, as opposed to how do we solve problems in a new way? And then the other one, which isn't quite an innovation quote, but it has been at the forefront of my mind for the last, for quite a few months. And that is, never take down a fence until you know why it was put there. And I think a lot of times we just come in and say, everything here is wrong, let's start over. And you're like, hang on, do you understand why that fence is there?
Right.
So that's my innovation quote. Never take down a fence until you know why it was put there.
Yeah. Like it. Thank you very much for both of those. And I also like the take on don't bring me solutions, bring me problems, which should be the product manager's motto, I think.
I think so too.
For listeners that have enjoyed this conversation and finding out more about some of your experience and insights, how can they find out about you, resources that you have, the coaching that you do?
Sure. Come check us out at productgrowthleaders.com. You can also follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky, is it? I zoned out there for a second. Anyway, Twitter and X, and LinkedIn, of course. I'm
LinkedIn
mostly
profile.
on LinkedIn these days. I think
Okay.
Twitter became too political, so I'm happily over here in LinkedIn land most of the time.
Yes, and I see you posting on LinkedIn as well, so that's great. And tell us about Product Growth Leaders just a bit. What are you doing there to help people with that are leading product management type efforts?
Well, similar to some of the things you described, we work primarily with teams and focus on getting teams working together. And I think a lot of training says send one person to the training, and then that one person knows how to do it. But what we really enjoy is getting the whole product team together.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find is product teams never get together to talk about product management.
Right.
They talk about launching this new product or how are we going to go to sales kickoff, but we never talk about the mechanics of product management.
Yep.
So my group, my team, we focus pretty much on product teams and make sure we get some clarity on roles and responsibilities, process, standardizing materials, and we tend to do things over a long period of time as opposed to a one-day training or a two-day
Right.
training. We do like 90-day programs.
You're coaching alongside with the team
Yes.
on what they need to accomplish, helping them do that better.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I should have said that. We think of it more as coaching to an end state rather
Yeah.
than training.
Yeah, I love the motto. I think it works really well. Listeners, if you find yourself wanting to improve the performance of your product team, Steve is a great person to reach out to, and I would encourage you to do so. And I'll make sure the LinkedIn profile is in the show notes for that. And it's productgrowthleaders.com. It's an
Correct.
excellent place to go check out. So,
Correct. And one
Steve,
more quick one, if you will. I wrote an ebook in 2008, I think, when I was at Pragmatic on the strategic role of product management. And it occurred to me this year that so much has changed since then that I should rewrite it. So I've recently, just late last year, put out a new version of it. It's just an update, a second edition of what is the strategic role of product management circa 2025.
excellent.
And I'll give you a link for that to put in the show notes as well.
And what's the title of the book?
The strategic role of product management.
Okay, that's it. The strategic role of product
And
management.
to circle back around to the beginning of our conversation, if you're a product manager, you really need to embrace the strategic role of product management, or you're going to
Absolutely.
find that you're reporting to an AI.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be there to support the strategic objectives of the organization.
Definitely.
Great. Wonderful discussion. Nice catching up with you and sharing this with everyone that is listening as well. Look forward to doing it again at some point. So, Steve, thanks so much for being part of the podcast today.
It's a pleasure being here as always.
And listeners, if you want to find out those links and also see the written version of everything we talked about, we make an article of this. We also include some questions in there for you. I know there are organizations like Product VPs that listen to this and say, hey, here's a topic we want to dive into. We write those questions kind of as discussion questions for groups to help you think more deeply about what we discussed. You'll find that resource at productmasterynow.com/540. As always, keep innovating.
Thank you for listening to Product Mastery Now, where product leaders and managers gain product mastery through practical knowledge, influence, and confidence. By listening, you are becoming a product master, creating products customers love. Find additional resources at productmasterynow.com. Keep innovating.